Episode 19. Kate and I are back discussing Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 3, The Queen's Justice, I think it was called. I thought it was a good episode. I thought it was a significant step up from the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. We just finished it. And my initial reaction to this one is, I need time to process it, which to me I think is a sign that we got something good. Right off the bat, I can say the writing was a drastic improvement from what we've seen in a long time. Not to say that, there were a couple good episodes last season. I guess more the writing of the dialogue, it was better.
Yeah, it was obvious that they knew that Jon and Dany meeting was going to be a big event, and they really treated it with care to make sure that it was a healthy back and forth. It was like a 20-minute long scene, just that very first scene. And
it was long.
You know, we can nitpick some silly things here and there. I don't know if it's worth it, but all in all, they definitely seemed to have put a big investment into making sure that there was a good dialogue.
Yeah, they went out of their way to say, hey, fire and ice are finally meeting. And, for a story that says a song of ice and fire, this is a very, very big moment. And I appreciate that they put care into it. And you're right. I think there are a few things that we could be nitpicky about, but that's at best. We could be nitpicky. There weren't glaring problems with it. Unlike last episode where there was sufficient opportunity for it to be good, but it wasn't. I feel I got something that I haven't gotten since the Red Wedding, where I didn't see the Tyrell house going down. They surprised me. They got me.
Yeah, that was good. Let's wait to get to that, though. Let's go in order of the settings. So Jon shows up at Dragonstone, and I guess at this point we just have to just completely abandon all considerations of how long it takes to get anywhere.
Jetpacks, man.
Yeah, how news travels and whatever. At this point, we just accept it. There's, no use complaining about it anymore. They'll just make it happen when it happens.
Yeah, so. I agree.
One thing I thought was a little weird is that I think that was the first time we ever saw people shaking hands as an introduction.
I thought so too. I remember thinking that looked odd.
Well, I realized later why they did it, and I think it was to foreshadow or set a precedence for when Jorah and Sam shook hands, signifying that he could now have his hand shaken. So I was trying to figure out why are they doing this. Then when it showed them later, I was like, okay, they're showing that it's not that weird to shake hands like normal people do in our world. That's as best I can come up with.
But normally when they do it, they grab
the elbows. Right. So They did this totally different. I think it was just, like I said, to foreshadow Jorah being able to do it.
But I think that could have stand on its own, though, because it's Sam's way of saying, I'm not afraid of you. You're normal again. There was so much significance in just the moment with Sam that it didn't need to be foreshadowed.
Well, I'm just saying we might have noticed that also, that, hey, they're shaking hands. That's strange. But there was already a precedent set earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
But anyways, so they get over there, and Davos had a kind of pointless conversation with Missandei. Where are you from? And that was kind of creepy old man-ish, but... whatever. I don't know why that was there. I guess just to show that it's much different.
I think part of, again, we were questioning what exactly is Davos's role previously, but let's just call him Jon's hand. I think part of what Davos's job, what he needs to do is to kind of scout out people, the territory, get the lay of the land, know who you're dealing with. And I think that's what he was doing. I can't remember if it came before or after, but Tyrion introduces Missandei. I think it came before as Queen Daenerys' most trusted advisor. So already there, he should get to know her a little bit and stuff. I didn't think it was too creepy, but I like Davos, so
yeah, no,
maybe I'm blind for
funny. And Davos is a good salesman. He likes to pitch his people. He's
just speaking the truth, and he believes it. And he's not trying to sell it. He's just more saying it.
Yeah. Okay, so Jon and Dany meet, and Dany was more or less kind of unlikable, I thought, but she showed, right, she gave in and showed a little bit of her, why we're supposed to like her.
I actually think that it wasn't just to remind us why we're supposed to like her. I think it was a chance to give us some contrast. I think she sees qualities in Jon that she admires. And no, they did not come out at first when in that initial part, but as he continues talking and he's not power hungry. He doesn't want to rule everything. He's not bending the knee just to be stubborn, even though he is stubborn. That's not why he's doing it. And he's showing good qualities of a ruler and an ally. I think it means something that Tyrion thinks highly of him, but I think it also means something that she's been around a lot of people now and known a lot of, like even her brother, who just wanted to rule because they think it's their birthright and nothing else. Where, at least for her, she tries to actually help people, and that's what she sees in Jon.
Yeah, John's such a reasonable guy. When they were talking, I kept thinking like how funny or interesting it would have been if she were having that meeting with someone like Tywin or someone like Stannis or something who were way less reasonable. It would have been fun to watch that too.
Yeah.
Whatever would have happened.
But I mean, I think that's actually my point, is that she sees things in Jon where he's trying to be diplomatic, but he's also not caving in and being like, all right, I'll just bend my knee. And, he's trying to do the best he can. And I think that's something that will actually draw her more to him. I also think the circumstances of her finding out about what happened to the Greyjoys and the Martells, or the Sand Snakes or whatever, that it's helping her realize, I need to not make enemies right now if I can help it.
Yeah, it certainly changed the power dynamic. She had full power over Jon at first, but when she realizes that half her fleet is gone, she's been taken down a notch. That softens her up for Tyrion to talk to Jon and get her to give some concessions with the dragon glass and stuff, which is, at least Tyrion did something productive here. He's spent, as we commented last week, he spent so much time just failing at doing anything. So at least he found a compromise that they could both work on without there being a significant show of weakness or anything.
I feel we have Tyrion back. This is the Tyrion that a lot of us love, not that jokester who just talks about drinking and all the time and telling jokes. He was much better off. Some of his dialogue I still thought was a little silly tonight. They're still trying to be a little too funny, but all in all, right, he's playing a nice strategic game, and then we'll get to Castle Rock later, but I like that he did do something worthwhile that showed his intelligence, and then he did have a good plan that backfired, and I like that it wasn't all a winning Tyrion this episode. Yeah, no, I agree. I like the way that he counseled Jon and Dany. That's how great Tyrion is that he can counsel people not on his side. And I really enjoyed this. Like, even though that's not what Jon probably thought was happening, Tyrion was still doing that. And that's part of his appeal. He's still good in that way. And
just tiny little nitpick thing that I have to whine about is that Jon moves towards the throne and they make sure to show that her bodyguards step up. But then inexplicably, they have their own private meeting later.
Right, there's nobody around her even close. Yeah, I noticed that too, and I found that kind of annoying. And I wouldn't have been annoyed by it had they not had the scene in the throne room where he barely moves and people are like, what?
Right. They went out of their way to show. Yeah. But all in all, I don't have many complaints. There was such a long scene, 20 minutes of talking, that it's hard for me to remember everything they talked about. Davos did mention that he was stabbed in the heart, and Jon obviously wants that kept mum for one reason or another. And
did Lady Melisandre tell Varys? Even though we didn't see it on screen, like, why is that being held such a secret?
Right. And while we're talking about Melisandre and Varys, I wasn't sure what to make of the fact that apparently she's going to leave, but she knows she's destined to come back and die, and that he's also destined to die in Westeros. Only because the fact that she's going to leave and come back, I feel like we don't have enough episodes left for that. I guess with the teleportation machine, maybe we do, but
yeah.
But did you have any thoughts on that? It's kind of vague. It's hard to know what to think. But
yeah, I think it goes back to, at least with the Varys thing, is something to do with what was told to him when he was cut, and there was a voice in the fire. Because otherwise, why else would those words mean anything to him when Lady Melisandre says that? So I think there's something more to it. I just don't know exactly what it is yet.
Yeah.
But one thing I did appreciate is, going back to Jon and Dany, is Dany did, and they put it in the show in her dialogue, and I like this, is she makes a point of saying, hey, dragons were thought to be extinct and all these other magics and things, and yet I found them to be real. And here's another guy saying things that we thought weren't real are.
Right.
And, maybe I shouldn't just brush them off. And I like that, because that's consistency that I feel like there's no convenience there. That's something where I appreciated that very much in the writing of this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Not too many complaints there. If we think of more to talk about with that, we can get back to it. Next, we had a brief scene of Theon. There's really nothing much to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's alive.
Was he picked up by Yara's people or by?
I think one of the escaping ships. That's the way I took it. I guess just to show he's alive and that his people once again are looking down at him.
Right, but why even bother saving him? If they already know that the only reason why he's alive is because he didn't even bother to try and help Yara.
Right, there's a million reasons he could have ended up in the water.
but they don't really think too highly of people like Theon. I'm surprised that they even bothered.
Yeah.
They're not a forgiving people.
Yeah. Okay, well, poor Theon.
And what's going to happen to Yara, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say. So yeah, that'll jump us over to King's Landing. So in the books, of course, both Yara and Theon are currently Stannis' captives. So
by Winterfell.
At Winterfell, yeah. Right. So, or not at Winterfell, but right outside Winterfell, right. Yeah. So anything at this point in the show is way going to be different. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with her. She's not really a good ransom piece for the rest of the Greyjoys or anything. Her faction of it is essentially destroyed. I don't know, but I got a kick out of Euron. He was great this episode. Just marching in the streets, being a hero when we know he's such a twisted person, but he was rightly being applauded.
He's just loving it all.
His acting's, the guy's a good actor, but his acting seems to change episode to episode. Like tonight was he was big on whispering tonight,
Yeah, I found it interesting when he was talking to Jaime.
Yeah, that was great. I was laughing during that. That was
Well, but more like they were filming from over several people's heads, and yet it seemed like he was whispering. And so they kind of changed the camera angles a little bit, but I just remember thinking, like, God, how loud is he talking right now? Like, how many people can hear him?
That was a weird scene. They took the camera back like 10 yards or 20 yards or something, and then he's like, does your sister like a finger in the bum? But no, Euron's a good
Jamie's
addition.
token look of outrage each episode now.
Yeah. I like Euron. He's at least funny. Somebody pointed out to me after last week's episode, I was talking to him, he said he got a kick out of Euron because he was the only character that wasn't talking like some snooty royal. Like,
yeah.
And that's still true in this one. So even though he's totally like cartoony, and everything,
he was more last episode for me. I actually he was more.
When
I think
he was
he's
on
being
top
himself.
of that drawbridge thing that fell and he's screaming.
Yeah.
But he is a breath of fresh air in a show where everyone is so solemn. And even like Ramsay, who was also funny in his own way, was a different kind. Like there was...
Maybe I think initially, but not last season, I think with Ramsay. He kind of lost that. But what I like with Euron, at least how the show is doing him, he's quite different in the books as we've come to know him. But he's not in the books a whole lot so far.
Yeah.
But what I like about here is he's a likable bad guy. Where a lot of the bad guys aren't.
Right, Joffrey and Ramsay and Roose.
You love to hate him, but...
I liked Roose, actually, but in a different kind of way. Last week, I mentioned that Euron had his famous ship, but I couldn't remember what it's called. It's called Silence. And that's because in the books, all of the mates have no tongues. He cut out everyone's tongues on his ship. And his ship is called Silence. And that's his famous thing that everyone fears in the 14 Seas or whatever.
And maybe it's the way it sneaks up on people.
Another thing I forgot to mention last week, or maybe even the week before, but when they had all the women debating and everything, just a couple weeks ago, The Economist magazine put out an article talking about whether queens or kings went to war more. So I pulled it up. Here's what it says. They studied how often, this is some academic study, European rulers went to war between 1480 and 1913. Over 193 reigns, they found that states ruled by queens were 27% more likely to wage war than those ruled by kings. Which is kind of interesting. But then it goes on to say, this was not all the queen's fault. Men, seeing them as soft targets, tended to attack them. But I thought that was just interesting, and I was kind of mad at myself for not remembering it on the spot when we were getting all these queens debating policy. Okay, so yes, and Cersei, I guess, is the next person we'll talk about at King's Landing. So she gets her revenge. Lena Headey played it well. She looked, smugly satisfied as usual when she can. And
yeah, there's something difficult to watch. Like, even though Ilaria Sand is really not that different from Cersei Lannister in some ways, of what she's done and how ruthless she is and how she doesn't care. And especially her character, at least in the show here, of killing Darren.
Tristan. Oh, Doran.
Doran and
But
then
Tristan
Tristan
was really bad when they stabbed him through the face. Like, I can't. It's very hard for me to have sympathy for these characters with all the bad that they've
Well,
done.
and so that's kind of the thing. Like when that scene was happening, and I thought all those the woman who played Ilaria also did an amazing job with that scene.
Good acting all the
like
way
you could like feel that pain from that scene, and you know I kept thinking of like, you know, she's not that different from Cersei, and yet this hurts. To watch this really hurts, and it was a tense scene for me because her daughter was there, and I was like, oh God, she's gonna go for the daughter, and I kept wondering how's she gonna do it. It's Cersei. This is gonna be bad, and that's another great like shout out to the writing and to the acting where I found it tense for me because I was so scared of how Cersei was gonna do that.
I wonder if that's just the end of Ilaria, like if they're just gonna rot in the dungeon and we never see them again. Like, is that just a way to get rid of the whole Dorne forever? Just like we basically got rid of Highgarden forever, both in one episode. I would guess probably.
I feel like Dorne is probably at like such a place of civil unrest given all the stuff that's been happening to it lately.
Yeah, they can't possibly like spark a story there.
Yeah,
and Qyburn is really the mad scientist, the secret weapon. Cersei's very lucky to have him. He, is able to figure out this poison thing and bring them out back to life.
And that's something that I think this episode was trying to say about Cersei that even I am guilty of, is where people constantly underestimate her. And several times today, maybe it was the same person doing it, but she was saying, oh, you are your father's daughter, for sure. The Bravos banker guy. And, that's what she's always wanted, was to be this, this ruling Lannister, and hated that she was a woman because of how that prohibited her from being able to rule, but yet here she is. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen in the books for her character, because her character in the books, she's kind of seen as a buffoon at this point.
Yeah.
Where she's just picking all the wrong people, the small council, making all the wrong decisions with the Faith Militant.
Right, she's very self-destructive in the books.
Right, and it's just, she's just seen as like a bomb just waiting to go off.
I got a feeling that however they write it in the show, she will be her own demise one way or another.
I agree, but I like though that they've made her an actually decent foe. Coming into this season, I was like, what are they really why do we even need 2 seasons left? Because what's there left to do?
Right.
Now I'm actually seeing like, oh, okay, I like that it's not super easy for Dany. With her Unsullied, with the Dothraki, with the dragons. I like that they're making this hard for her.
Right. If anything, they're making it so hard for her so fast that it's... But again, we just got to chalk that up to the nature of the show. So the Iron Bank shows up. So I was always wondering why they had Stannis go to the Iron Bank if he was just going to miserably fail and die a season later.
That's the one time Davos did sell.
Well, right. And that's what I was thinking of earlier. But so Stannis goes to the Iron Bank and gets the loan. And then his men turn on him, and it's all a big disaster. And I kept thinking, like, why did they even have him go to the bank? They could have had his story exactly the same if he just took the remnants of his army and did, just like in the books. So in the books, he does not go to the bank. He goes and saves the wall with the remnants of his army, and then he goes to attack Winterfell without the bank, and only then the bankers go to find him to support him. So we'll get to that in a second. But anyway, so now I realize they had him go to the bank to introduce us to the bank for this scene.
Well, yeah, but I also think, and this is something that George R. R. Martin does in his books that I think he's received a lot of praise for, is, instead of just writing about a bunch of people who have wars, he also writes about how money and banks do play such a huge role in things like this. And I actually think the introduction of it for Stannis was just showing, hey, and they say it in this episode, gold wins wars. And I think that's a really historically accurate thing in some ways. And it also just shows that the Iron Bank is always paying attention to what's going on.
Well, right, agreed. But they had the whole conversation about how we don't make bets and then it's an investment. She's like, oh, no, that's a bet. But they do make bets. They bet poorly on Stannis. So well,
Stannis didn't owe them a bunch of money and refused to pay it back.
No, I know. But I think that the show only had him go to introduce us for today. Because they made a terrible investment in him in the show. And it showed that they're not particularly good investors. At least that's the way I took it.
No, because they lent a whole bunch of money to... They gave out a bunch of subprime... What's loans? What is it?
Subprime loans to the Lannisters?
They gave not to the Lannisters. Well, I guess kind of the Lannisters, because I think Tywin was there.
That's
but
Robert.
Like Robert, yeah. They kept giving more and more money to a crown that wasn't going to pay them back.
Well, so it's better described in the books. In the books, basically, they were willing to do that as long as Tywin was alive. And then after Tywin dies, Cersei blows off the bank, and that's when they go and seek out Stannis, and they decide to back Stannis. Who knows where that'll go? But right, I do like that the bank is an important institution. Just
tell
like
me
in
if I
real life.
remember this wrong, but I remember Tywin. Was it in the show that he said there's no money left at Castle Rock? And although I think in the books that's never said, it might end up being true. But we're led to believe that the Lannisters still have a lot of gold. Or is it the other way around?
I'm pretty sure it's the show that said that the mines were empty.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm not sure if I remember that either. So yeah, I'm glad the bank is back. And again, in the books, they're backing Stannis at this point. So it's going to be another huge departure, I think. Anything else with King's Landing? Oh, Jaime and Cersei went public. Cersei is very confident right now. So I wonder if that's...
Yeah, and there was also that scene where they're definitely showing and laying some groundwork and foundation that Jaime has some problems with Cersei. So at first when she comes to him, he says no, but then he gives in pretty easily.
Right.
And then he's watching her while she sleeps. And, I always think about why are they giving airtime to certain things? And I don't think they're doing it because like, oh, I'm with my sister finally. I think he's realizing that the tides are shifting and this isn't going to last much longer. And it's one of the few times when Cersei's kind of looking peaceful.
Yeah, it's hard to say, though, because then Queen of Thorns, Lady Olenna, says to Jaime, like, this has got its own momentum beyond you, out of your control. And he says that's true. I wonder if we're just not going to get the story arc from Jaime that people expect. He's just maybe along for the ride.
I kind of still have hope for it. I feel like he's a strong character in the show and the books, and that the show may... I don't know. I feel like the show isn't done with him yet. And more than Cersei's lapdog, for sure.
So Sansa is very good and smart all of a sudden, which is fine. She knows about leather and armor, and she knows about food storage and things like that.
I think it's kind of one of those things where she grew up in Winterfell and she knows some of this stuff. She just never really paid much attention to it before she needed to. So, like, I can understand that she probably has this knowledge. But they say when Tyrion and Jon meet up and Tyrion inquires about her that she's smarter than she lets on. And Jon's like, well, she's letting on.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of the show showing that. I appreciate that she doesn't just look like a petulant child anymore, that she's actually putting other like grown men to shame about how she's trying to rule it and like be a good ruler. And I think the show's probably trying to show because they have Bran show up and he's like, I can't be the ruler here. And I think they're trying to show that it could be Sansa. And maybe will be.
My bold prediction is that Sansa is destined for great things. She's going to be some kind of major ruler at the end of this.
I think she could be the Warden of the North by the end of all this.
I think she could be. If there's a queen of the Seven Kingdoms, it could be her. There might not be, but I think she's going to be one of the few people to survive the whole thing, and she's going to queen. Who's the Queen of England?
Queen Elizabeth?
Elizabeth or Virginia or something. Who's the redheaded queen? Is it Elizabeth?
Mary?
Anyways, Sansa is her. But then Littlefinger showed us why he's smart in playing the game, which last week we were bitching about how dumb he is, and I was saying, like, hopefully it'll be revealed that this is all these vulnerabilities that he's leaving for himself will be revealed to be a plan. And we'll see. Maybe tonight was just to show us that he's dubious, but maybe it was a plan to have show up in the crypts like a creepo and have Jon get mad at him and things like that.
I'm still kind of puzzled of what his point is.
Well, if we have confidence in him and in the writers, he's gaming the system right now, like always.
What did you make of Sansa and Bran?
I don't know. So the last couple of episodes, they've been extremely obvious in explaining things to us, like Dany has dragons and we need them to fight the White Walkers, and that translates to male or female. And then this one time where I would like an actual explanation as to what the Three-Eye Raven kind of is. I'm like, I want that simple dialogue. They're keeping it vague, which is fine. I didn't like that Bran was acting all weird because that was
odd. He like the boy is gone completely, but there was a very quick transition
Right,
of that.
right. No transition time. And it was like that last week with Arya, too, when she was talking to Hot Pie, and she's, zoned out into the third dimension, thinking about killing or whatever. But anyways, these transitions seem a little weird to me. Like, Bran is suddenly just a different person than who we know, but...
How quickly he grew up and kind of how distant he was acting. And I don't know, maybe that's just a consequence of learning so much information so fast. I mean, basically, he saw his sister get raped and he knows that Jon is part Targaryen. He knows that his dad isn't who he thought he was. Like, Bran has been inundated with a lot of information that contradicts probably everything that he used to believe, and then he's coming into information of stuff that's happening currently that's hard to take. Like, maybe that's what happens, is you don't have time to grow up. You just do it really fast then. I'm curious about how the North, now that they actually have a true-born son that's still alive of Ned Stark, back at Winterfell, but like he's just going to turn it down like how Aemon did.
Yeah, I guess so.
And they just accept it, and but I did find it a poignant scene. There's something for me, like I'm a Stark fan through and through, and whenever these Starks, including Jon, get together and get reunited, I get a little verklempt over it.
All right, should we move on to Old Town?
Yeah.
So
Sam's really fast.
Yeah, I didn't really like that at all. I mean, I'm glad Jorah's fine, I guess. That's great. But, they made it a point to just show how Stannis had to search far and wide to all the best maesters, and not just the Seven Kingdoms, but Bravos and everywhere else, before he could finally find someone to stop it. And the person who could stop it couldn't get it off Shireen's face or anything. It was still... So it's like...
I mean, he's scarred, but like he still had his normal physique. It didn't look like he had chunks of flesh missing.
Right. So not only can Sam do it, so he's an expert at that, but they had the cure sitting in the book. They just needed someone with good enough hands. So the cure to grayscale has been known since whenever. So I didn't buy that really at all.
I think it's incredibly dangerous. And
Well, he said, so how'd you do it? And he said, I read the book and followed the instructions. So they know the cure to grayscale, we found out tonight. So anyways, I liked the scene in that it was touching, and
I thought both actors did a really nice job of Jorah and Sam, and it's a scene that could have been easily forgotten, but they made it memorable.
Right, yeah. The acting was good. The handshake had meaning, and that was fine. I didn't buy the whole thing, but whatever.
I'm hoping that Sam's punishment, though, is he's going to go through those scrolls, and right now it's kind of like, it's just his punishment, and I'm hoping it's actually going to lead him to learning something of great significance.
Right, yeah. I guess that's all there is to say about that. Do you think Jorah will make it back to Khaleesi, or is something's going to happen to him on the way?
I mean, he
will.
He kept finding his way back over Anissa, so
he will at some point. But I mean, is he going to show up in Dragonstone next episode, or is he going to have to go through and fight someone here and do something there?
Just really quick, what happened to Gilly and Little Sam?
Oh yeah, they've been written out of the story for convenience.
Okay. It looks like Sam lives there.
Yeah. All right, so we finally see Casterly Rock. In the previews for the season, I was like, it's so obvious Casterly Rock is going to fall. Why are they showing us this in the preview? And then it fell, but I like that nobody saw that it was going to be a ploy.
Well, and exactly what Rob did.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So that was good. I didn't like when there was like that montage and Tyrion's voiceover. I was like, this sucks. This battle sucks. And his voiceover is distracting.
Yeah, I was wondering when we were watching it, why they chose to do it that way. And I was wondering, like, maybe they're just trying to switch it up so it's not just another battle scene.
Right. And it all made sense with the big reveal, but at the time I was like, what the fuck,
Right.
But
and it kind of makes it seem like with his narration that they think they know everything that's going on. They really don't.
Yeah. And by the way, in the books, Tyrion was also in charge of the sewers.
Yeah.
So that was consistent. But yeah, so we finally see Casterly Rock. Great strategy, I guess, by Jaime and the Lannisters. It worked out. At least it might have been a little risky, but it worked out. Euron used his teleporter device to get his fleet over there in super fast speed. So they have Casterly Rock, but they apparently won't be able to hold it. Grey Worm is stuck there, I guess. So that's one of Dany's... I guess all the Unsullied are stuck there, so they're just removed from the chessboard for now. Then they moved over to Highgarden. I didn't buy that Highgarden was such pathetic fighters, but then it dawned on me that I guess Randall Tarley was their protector.
Yeah.
And he flipped on them, so that's with him on their side. It would have been a fight. Maybe even they would have won, but without him, I guess they're just not much.
It's just so funny then. What was that whole thing when they came to King's Landing to go against the Faith Militant?
Right.
Like, nobody was talking about what a pathetic army they were then.
Right. They were talking about how they're the biggest army in the land. So I'm just going to chalk it up to say that half the army went with Randall Tarley. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems so funny to me that the Lannister army couldn't save Cersei. They needed the Tyrells. That just seems inconsistent to me.
No, I know, it was weird, but at least it addressed what we talked about last week, which is Highgarden provides the food.
Yeah.
So I guess that took care of that.
And they're taking Highgarden was very rich. They're taking all their money and giving it to the Bank of Bravos.
Oh, yeah. That'll settle that. But I was not convinced at how fast it went, and Lady Olenna's like, we've never been much for fighting. But whatever. They moved a lot of chess pieces around the board tonight, and they did it swiftly. So
yeah, and then I like you saying that in that metaphor because of like that table at Danny's where they have all those pieces,
right?
Because it really is what's happening. And I can't remember her name offhand, but the woman who plays Lady Olenna is just amazing.
I think Diana Rigg.
She just nailed that. It's probably I think one of her best scenes in the series, and she's got some good ones in there. Like one of my favorites of hers as well is when she's with Tywin because it's just so fun to see. But I mean, here's a woman who's basically seen the ruin of her house. She's the last really remaining survivor, and now she watches it fall. It's just so tragic.
Yeah,
and yet she steals the.
Right.
She's still always ahead.
Yeah.
She gets the last word. She gets the last laugh.
I was wondering if Jaime was gonna cut her up at that point, which would have been gratuitous. And
I think Jaime's too good for that, even knowing that.
Well, we breezed through this pretty quick, but I feel good with it. I thought it was a significant step up in quality of episodes.
Yeah,
and they were breezing all over the map, so it was.
I definitely do get the sense in this episode that they're rushing things way more than they used to. That there's a little bit less storytelling happening, and it's more like, okay, here we now, and this is happening, here's now. And they did a nice job of it this episode, so like I'm not complaining, but I do miss some of that storytelling that we got from seasons past. That I think when they had more source material from the books, we were able to get, and maybe that's just how they have to do it without having that source material. But
yeah, I agree. It's definitely moving along fast, and I guess, like you said, when it's handled with quality like it was tonight, it doesn't irk me so bad as it has.
We complain a lot more than we did today.
Yeah,
maybe that's why
I was afraid we were getting too negative or like whining all the time. But
do you think we're going to see a whole lot to do with the Whites and the Walkers this season?
I don't know.
We've got 4 episodes left.
4 episodes left. I think that at the end of the season, they will be in Westeros or south of the Wall. Either the Wall will come down or they'll go around it or whatever. But by the end of the season, they will be marching into the 7 Kingdoms. But probably we won't see, as far as any major battles and stuff, I think probably not this season.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering what next season's really going to be about.
Well, cool. Thanks for joining me again. I enjoyed the episode, and I think it hopefully gives us a preview of more good stuff to come.
Yeah, me too.
All right. See you next week.
Sounds good.